Hi, welcome back to another Roboflow training movie. In the previous training movie, I created a workflow called hotfolder catalog or check into Vault. It is a hotfolder workflow that looks in a hotfolder, a drop folder. Any file dropped in there is checked if it already exists in the catalog with a query. If it is found, the query looking for the record name equals the file name, then it's checking in the file instead of cataloging it. If the record name is not found, it will simply catalog the file as new. Now I just made it plain and simple. In this movie I want to show you how you can improve it a little bit. First of all, if you look in the workflow, you will notice these are the standard parameters. Now, you know that in this workflow we're using a catalog to catalog, but we are actually selecting it here to avoid later having to go into this particular workflow to figure out what catalog you were using. I prefer to put it in the parameters. So what I do is I just say catalog name, and then if I click OK, I will have a text field where I can add the catalog. But I can also use a select catalog dialog. So all I need to do is here say colon and then this, and here you have in the help all the different selectors that you can create. So I have catalog name, select catalog dialog. Be careful, if you create those parameters, you can no longer remove them because this parameter interface does not allow you to remove parameters, just as a security precaution that you would not be removing any of the mandatory fields in here. So catalog name is now a new parameter, and thus I can go in my workflow and use it. How can I do that? Well, actually, if I go in here, what you should do is to avoid typing mistakes. You will notice that the name of the field will always be in the help. So you can pick it up, and here in the open catalog I can say edit. And as you maybe already saw from previous examples, you can use the inline instruction called tag to get to any stored values. So by doing this, the catalog name is now picked up from a variable. It's actually picked up from the master, from the global parameters, and whatever I put here will now be used here. That means that when I come back in 6 months time, I don't have to go in and find out what catalog was used inside my script. I can see it right here. I do usually the same thing for the asset handling set. So either you can use the standard asset handling set that is defined here. So you can say I'm using the standard asset handling set that I define here. The field in which this is stored inside the global parameters is the name. So what I can do in my workflow is I can in whatever instructions that use an asset handling set, instead of using this standard, I can say hash, and it will pop up this drop down, and it already knows that this exists. So that means that you're not using some specific asset handling set in here, but you're just using this one. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the permission. It knows that this exists because it's an out-of-the-box parameter, so it proposes it so you can add it. So you don't have to wonder afterwards which ones I'm using. If you're always using that ideology, you know that you are using the global one. Should your workflow have a different one, need for a different one, then again I would create it here with exactly the same name. It doesn't matter. When the workflow starts, it first loads the global parameters, then it loads the parameters of this workflow, and only then it's working in the action script. So if you create it in that case with the same name here, you're safe. You don't have to worry about it. You just can create it here, and it will be specific for this workflow. Same for the permission template. So there was another instruction where we had this, which was the check-in. So in the check-in, we're only using the asset handling set, and here we select the asset handling set. Mind you, it's very important to remember that the asset handling set needs to exist in your Cumulus environment and needs to have the proper parameters set up. And this example is being done in Roboflow 9.2.5. You should at least have a 9.2 version to use these functionalities. Another improvement on this workflow is actually inside the script. The script opens the catalog and closes the catalog. Now remember that if I drop one file in, it opens the catalog once and closes at the end the catalog once. If you throw in 4,000 files, in that case it might be useful, faster, not having to open and close the catalog all the time. So the workflow offers you an instruction called test, Cumulus conditional, and it offers you test workflow progress. So you can know in which state this is. I want to know if this the file, the first file that is being dropped in that I'm processing in this loop. Well, then at that point I will say test if first item or file, doesn't matter, of loop. And the same can be done for records if you have a record workflow, so a hot collection workflow. So what I can do, I open this by clicking here, I say cut and paste. Now we have to be very careful. When we open it, we have to close it as well. So same applies here. So I say I can only close it when we are processing the last record. So now I'm doing exactly the same thing, conditional test workflow progress, and I'm selecting last item of loop, and I'm saying here instead of first, I'm typing last, and again add it to the comment, which makes my script a little bit more readable. I open it, I cut, and I paste in. Now this workflow will run into an error because what you have to know is that parameters are stored globally and are available for every run of every file in the workflow. But the objects that you create inside the action script, which is executed once per file and is emptied, cleared once before it starts processing the file every time. That means that if I open for the first file the catalog, this object is stored inside the local memory environment of that one item. It's not stored globally. So in the next loop, the second workflow item, the second file that is processed, it will not execute this part of the script because it is not the first item of the loop, it's the second, so it will not open the catalog. And you're saying, yeah, but it's open. Yes, but this object no longer exists. It is open and you keep the resources there, but you no longer have access to it because it's a variable that was only available in your local environment. To fix that, you need to prefix the name that you give this variable with the wording global, and wherever you use this, you should also use that. So whenever we do a find, and whenever we do the cataloging, and whenever we do the search, here, why don't we do the check-in? Oh, careful. Check-in, 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 check-in. A is on a record, so we don't have the file, but the process does have it here. Okay. So now when it creates this object, it doesn't store it locally for this specific file, but it stores it in the global parameters, in the same spot where it stores these parameters, and that's why we can access them. In the creation, you need to add the global. In the other instructions, you actually don't. Like here, you don't have to specify this global. It's not mandatory, but it makes more sense to do so. Why? Because by default, if you don't specify the prefix global, it looks first in the local memory space, and if it doesn't find it in the local memory space, at that point it looks in the global memory space. So in the instructions, there's no mandatory need to have it there, but it's for readability purposes definitely a good idea. Also, please specify always a notification here if you want to be notified for new files coming in. But even more important is, in any Roboflow installation, you should make sure that your email settings are set up and that you specify an email on error, because if the cataloging fails, it will send you an email. Then you know. And when it fails, you can come back to the workflow and say, okay, show me the log. And even if it's not running at that point and not showing you the log, you can even access the files up to 30 days, so 20 days, sorry. 20 days back, you can get to your workflow files, log files. So you can always go back and find them, whatever was wrong with them. Files that cause Cumulus cataloging errors will be blacklisted. So if a file in the log, you see that he refuses to process a file, it says skipped, then you will find it here in the blacklist. If you want this file to be reprocessed, you can remove it from the blacklist, and the next time it will use it again, try to catalog it again. Could be it's corrupted, could be another reason why it failed. So you can always go back and force the workflow to process it again. So I hope this was helpful. This was improving an existing workflow, and that way you can see that the workflow before wasn't bad, but this one is easier to maintain and is more safe to use. Thank you for joining, and see you in another movie.